Hey, let's start the show.
It's February 19th, 2015. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. I'm Will Smith. Seated directly to my left, Norman Chan.
That's me.
Norm, I have a question for you.
Sure, what's your question?
Tell me one thing that you love more than anything else in the world.
Oatmeal.
Really? Oatmeal. That is a bold choice.
Steel-cut oatmeal.
Do you cook it in a rice cooker?
I do not cook it in a rice
You
cooker.
cook it on the stove like some sort of peasant?
Yes.
Do you have a pot that just is going all the time? Do you love it that much?
No.
Well, never mind then. Jeremy Williams, welcome back to the show.
Thanks.
That was a weird question.
Yeah, why'd you ask that question?
I had no idea. I thought it was leading somewhere.
I in the car this morning as I was driving in, sitting in traffic on 280, kind of cursing the fact that I chose to move down the peninsula. I thought, this will be a good way to start the show. But after I asked the question, I realized that I had no idea where I meant to go with that. So here we are.
You must have a good answer, though.
No, not at all. Absolutely not.
Oh boy.
Jeremy Williams.
That's what that kind of show this is.
What's everybody got going on today? How's everything going? I closed the show notes a minute ago by accident, so I'm opening them back up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the whole system's breaking down.
What is that?
That is
So no Gary this week for everyone out there.
You can just turn off the show now.
The British guy is not there. The flannel-wearing British dude.
Is that what they described him as?
Yes. There are many descriptors for Gary. He was replaced today by a soundboard for those of you watching the video. But we do have with us Jeremy Williams. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Norm. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to be here. Yes. And Jeremy, we were just talking before the show started. Next week, you and your family are going off to Disneyland.
Yeah.
Now, we've started this podcast numerous times talking about Disneyland. It is a favorite topic of ours, of mine especially. You go every year, but you're going to be bummed out this year a little bit.
Well, they always close some attractions. It just so happens that this year they're closing our favorites.
Wait, hold on. What are your favorites? What are they? I've never been to Disneyland.
I didn't know we were talking about this right away. I haven't pulled up the list yet, but there's one that's based on Up. Well, that was converted to an Up theme after Up came out. That's an outdoor ropes coursey area.
Oh, this is California Adventure.
Well, yeah.
When you say they are two separate. While they are affiliated and next to each other and part of the Walt Disney
affiliated. They are
resorts.
affiliated. Yes.
Yes. They are separate parks.
Yeah,
technically.
You have to buy different tickets or buy the park hopper, which makes the most sense.
Yes. So when you go to Disneyland with your family, you have two kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old.
8 and 5.
8 and 5. Wow, 8-year-old. I presume you go to both parks, and you spend one day at each.
Yeah, we usually do go for 3, so we have a wild card day.
Oh.
So that one is a big favorite. And just of all of us, we all like it because it's actually just a cool zone to be in. They play this nice music. It's kind of mellow. You can do the ropes coursey stuff. It's not hustle bustle.
Like,
It's not too crowded.
When you
either.
say it's a ropes course, you mean like you put on a harness and you're up high in the air?
No, you can do a zip line where you ride. I'm not even sure there's a harness for that, to be honest with you. But it's more.
Hold on tight, kids.
It's more like a zip swing.
Okay.
But then there's just beautiful rope ladders that you climb up and you go up, into this cool playground area.
Have you been to the Death Watch page for this ride?
I don't think
there's a Death Watch page.
Yeah,
there's a
Wow.
where people died at Disneyland.
That's really morbid.
That exists for every park.
What about the measles scare? You not worried about that?
Oh, I'm hoping it'll clear the crowds out.
There were photos.
Who needs a fast pass when there's measles?
Right, Super Bowl Sunday and measles scare. Disneyland was empty.
Oh, Super Bowl Sunday is a good time to go to Disney World. Disneyland, Disney World, same thing.
So what other rides are potentially closed for you?
The Matterhorn. Oh, yeah.
The Matterhorn is a place where a lot of people have died.
I don't know about since they've changed it because now the sleds are different.
Well, I'm saying historically, since its inception in the 50s,
right.
The Matterhorn is a stone cold killer.
Matterhorn is now part of Fantasyland. It used to be part of Tomorrowland, and I think
is that right?
it moved over. Tomorrowland is a giant clusterfuck in Disneyland. It's way
Tomorrowland
underused.
is?
Tomorrowland absolutely is.
So when I was a kid and went to Disney World, Tomorrowland was easily my favorite part of the park.
Yes.
Like you had the rockets that were on top of the building, so you rode an elevator up, you got in these rocket cars, and then you were up terrifyingly high. But the rockets, I remember, had a joystick. And you could move the joystick to rock the rocket from side to side. So you could enjoy the centripetal force as it was spinning around on top of this mountain.
There's none of that. There are
It's all
3
gone.
primary rides at Tomorrowland that are worth going on. One is, of course, Star Tours. And then there's
You
also...
start with Star Tours. See, I would start with Space Mountain.
Well, there's
Space
new
Mountain's a
Star
classic.
Tours, right?
Star Tours was renovated about 4 or 5 years ago. 5 years ago now. There's Space Mountain, of course, which huge line, and that is a old building, and the way that line is queued, it is like 80s style, waiting out in the sun.
It's older than 80s style, dude.
You can't wait till you get underneath the interior part of the line. There's Space Mountain, there's Star Tours, and then there's also the Jedi Training Academy. That's all 3 of those attractions are in Tomorrowland. The other rides, other attractions in Tomorrowland, not super exciting in my opinion.
The Buzz Lightyear thing's pretty fun.
Buzz Lightyear is great for kids.
Oh, hold on. Now, Buzz Lightyear, there's a competitive aspect, right?
Yep.
You get a score at the end.
You shoot lasers.
You shoot lasers, and if you do the best for the day, you end up on this leaderboard all day long, right? There's a
I've never gotten close to doing the best.
there's from listening to other friends of the show, Idle Thumbs have had extended conversations about the best way to min-max the Buzz Lightyear game.
That's and if you play it that way, fantastic.
Right.
The reason I do not like the Buzz Lightyear game as much is because in California Adventure there is basically a souped-up version of that uses 3D glasses at the midway.
Yeah, but that's all two-dimensional. Well, it's 3D because you're wearing glasses,
Yes.
but it's all 2D screens, whereas the
Yes.
Buzz Lightyear one is actual animatronics and models.
Right.
That's fun.
It's very like the opening scene or the training sequence in Men in Black where Will Smith doesn't shoot the alien, but he shoots the thug and the creepy girl.
The little girl?
It's much like that, where it's cardboard. It's fluorescent, like black light cardboard cutouts.
Does the little
that
girl
glow.
have a quantum physics textbook?
There's no little girl in the actual Buzz Lightyear ride, but there's a lot of that type of those type of animatronics.
Does he say
that pop
to
out.
infinity and beyond?
Many times.
Okay.
But the worst part about Tomorrowland is the Innovations building, which is the pavilion that's much like the Disneyland version of Epcot, but not at all. And it's like sponsored by Honda.
Was that
It's-
the idea?
I think it was.
Huh.
I may be wrong, but it's where they have like the household of the future stuff that's all terrible.
It's like World's Fair crap, basically. Is what
but
it reminds me
a
of.
poorly designed version of. And it was never built for a World's Fair, and it's right now where they kind of relegate all the Marvel stuff. So they have all the Iron Man armor and the Thor attractions and that kind of stuff. And I think that's a wash.
Yeah,
They need to
it's full of
completely-
potential. It's got a lot of potential as a space.
Which is it seems like they would be building that up because Tomorrowland the movie is coming out later this year.
This Wikipedia page about
That's true,
people who've been
right?
killed by Disneyland is really grim.
Oh, let's stay off that
Let's-
topic.
yeah.
Sorry.
man. That's just
So what are the rides? And this is something that people who maybe want to go to Disneyland should check out. There's a website where you can find out which rides are closed, anticipated to be closed when you're going to go there.
Disney publishes the whole calendar.
And are these closed forever?
No. They close down everything periodically to refurbish and maintain it.
animatronics.
Make sure that people don't die.
That's good. We approve.
So the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh is a big one for my daughter.
Hon, what is that based on anything?
It's old school Pooh.
It's the 1977 classic Pooh.
Yeah, it's way off. You got to make a big trek to find it through like Frontierland.
Is it in It's in California?
It's in the Magic
It's
Kingdom.
Magic. Okay.
Splash Mountain is closed, which is they have like I forget what the theme of that is.
Splash Mountain.
That's
Frontierland.
No, Splash Mountain is based on
Song of the South.
Song of the South.
Right.
Yeah. But they don't tell anybody that.
No.
We don't talk about
You
that
can't
anymore.
find that film to see at Disneyland.
No.
You can get it from Japan.
It's kind of like in the corner also of that Frontierland
Yeah,
area.
it's way off in the corner.
I think in that area, Frontierland, the best ride is the Critters, the Railroad Critters one. They just renovated that last year.
Railroad Critters.
I'm not remembering the name, but it's the one where you go up with the dynamite at the end, and the Critter
Thunder
Country.
Mountain? Oh.
Yeah, Thunder Mountain. That's what it is.
Thunder Mountain Railroad?
Thunder Mountain Railroad.
Oh, that's great.
That's one of my favorite.
And that's been closed the last 2 years we've gone, so I'm super psyched to ride that.
So you haven't seen the renovated
No.
one? Oh,
Yeah.
The Final Ascent.
No, I'm down for
Crazy,
that.
like the Imagineers, what they did with the this dynamite. So you're on this railroad and it's in Critter Country, and they're like, it's like a mini roller coaster, not as exhilarating as a Splash Mountain or the Twilight
I
Zone.
would say
for
it is.
example.
It has.
I think it's the Disney World version is a pretty good roller coaster.
It's the same.
exactly the same.
It has
Yeah.
like 3 inclines. It's a long ride.
Yeah, it's really long ride. You have the dinosaur bones on the side, and then the very last ascent, it's indoors in a cave, and you see the dynamites wired to the side, and the way they animate the wires, so it looks like it's all trickling upward toward the dynamite.
Oh, that's cool.
So it looks like a sequence of fuses, is tremendous. That's a really great ride. But of course, the best ride, the ride that defines all modern amusement park
Tower of
rides.
Terror?
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Really?
Yeah.
Pirates, it's the best ride ever designed, ever made.
For animatronics, I would say it's probably the strongest ride.
In terms of like transporting, they tried to redo something similar for like the Little Mermaid one in California
Yeah,
Adventure. It's nowhere close.
No, it's not close to that. It's amazing that it all exists underground.
It's all underground, and it's the architecture, the way that the ride is designed, because you start off in the blue bayou,
Right.
and it's integrated
They
with
incorporate
the restaurant.
The blue, yeah, exactly.
There's a restaurant that's indoors where Disneyland, you're mostly going during, it's in Southern California. It's bright and, hot, but then you go indoors to this restaurant. It's a pretty expensive restaurant, but
Yep.
they do have a good, what is it? A cordon bleu, I think is their sandwich.
It's
they're
a
known
new-
for.
New
Chicken
Orleans.
breast with
Yes.
yeah,
with
Swiss cheese
melted,
and
which is, I think it's like a $25 sandwich, something ridiculous.
It's Disney.
But it's in New Orleans Square, and when you go in the restaurant, it's nighttime all the time, and so it feels like
And
you're-
outdoors on a
and
patio.
outdoors, right? It feels like you are in Louisiana on the bayou.
Do they make it really muggy in there?
There's air conditioning.
Well, there is
Okay.
the water because
yes.
the ride is right there.
The ride surrounds the beginning, the first 100
Wow.
feet of the ride goes around the restaurant. So it's as if you are also starting
In a real place.
in an outdoor a nighttime location.
Huh.
And then you dive down, and the storytelling of the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Hold on, is it like a log flume in Disneyland, or is it on tracks?
It's on tracks, but it's a wide boat. It's it's generous.
Like
It-
four
it
or
has-
6 people wide or something?
It's 4 wide and a big four,
Yeah.
so like 16 to 20 people.
It has some
Okay.
decent drops, like drops that'll scare a 5-year-old.
Yes, but the rest of the ride is designed in this cavernous space underwater, but it's compartmentalized. And one of the really interesting architectural details of the ride, in addition to like the animatronics, is it's a story that you're told. I don't think when you kids ride Pirates of the Caribbean, they don't know that you're being told a linear story.
Yeah.
And the very first scene of the ride, when you hear Dead Man Tell No Tales, is actually the end of the story. The whole ride is a flashback. It's how the pirates got to be at the end, where you see just the treasure chest, the hoard, and the skull and bones and the bones. So it's actually a cautionary tale for piracy.
Hey, kids.
And then, because
Don't grow up to
you
be
see the
pirates.
skeletons, you see the treasure, how did the pirates get here? This seems fantastic. And then as you go through these arches and the use of arches in that ride and in the queue itself is like this transporting mechanism.
It indicates a scene change, right?
A scene change, a time change. When you go underneath the arched bridge, you're going between, you're jumping forward in time.
This is great. Is this your interpretation?
No, I've read numerous Disney blogs about the design.
Very interesting.
The Imagineering design. Disney blogs are fantastic and crazy in depth.
I like, so first off, the Disney World version of Pirates of the Caribbean doesn't start in a restaurant.
And that's one of the big complaints.
Yeah.
It doesn't start in New Orleans Square. It's a different type
It starts by Swiss Family Robinson's Treehouse
right.
or something like that in
Yep.
Frontierland.
it's like some type of, I want to say like
Fantasyland, I guess.
It's not even that. It's like some Central America theme or something like that. But yes, it doesn't have that restaurant, and you kind of just go right into the ride.
Yeah.
Right into the pirate story.
And they retconned Jack Sparrow in, right?
Yes, they did, which is
Yeah.
what it is. I like it.
I'm okay with
the
Jack Sparrow generally,
animatronics,
yeah.
but I think he kind of overtakes the story because they redid the voices.
I like Haunted Mansion a lot. I'm a big fan of the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
As my two favorite rides as a kid were
that's a good one.
Mr. Toad and the Haunted Mansion. And Mr. Toad was great because they're two unique paths. I don't think Mr. Toad exists anymore. It's gone.
No, it's
there.
still there.
Oh, it's gone in Disney World. It's here. I think it's a Cars thing in Florida now.
Yeah, there's a Cars one in California Adventure now based on Mr. Toad.
Yeah. So, but you can choose the path. You get you choose at the beginning which line you get on. You get a completely different story.
I did not know that.
Yes, there are two different Mr. Toads.
Disneyland is that the same. The Mr. Toad Disneyland is in the storybook area, the Fantasyland entry area, where there are several rides are very similar. They're housed in like your classic.
It looks like a Quonset hut almost.
Like Peter Pan type Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Right. And I think
Small
Mr.
World.
Toad one mechanically is probably the least innovative. It is, as I think last time we talked about this, someone pointed out, it is the only ride in Disneyland where you actually go into hell and come back.
Most of them you just go into hell.
That's right. Peter Pan, I think, is actually the best in terms of that series of rides. The best in terms of the animatronics. It takes you above the city. Uses really good use of miniatures, and it doesn't have a lot of the illuminated holographic faces.
It makes you feel like you're flying.
It does.
See, the Peter Pan is one that they didn't have in Disney World. I need to go to Disneyland.
You know, Disneyland's closer.
I know. My parents have a house in Orlando, though, so it's
That's something.
virtually free.
So just to conclude this, go back to the beginning of this story. I wrote Disney, and I said, look, my family's coming, and we love it there, but our favorites are closed. Is there anything you can do? And I heard back last night, 5:30 p.m., I get a call from Walt Disney.
From Mr. Disney.
And
You got a phone call?
Yes.
They called you on the phone?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Like after closing hours. And he said, thank you for your email. I want you to know the executives are all going to get a copy. We're going to consider this, and we apologize. I'd like to send you some fast passes, which...
That's a gift.
It's not like one for me. It's like fast passes that work for the whole family.
You and 6 guests.
On any ride that we choose. I think he's sending us 4 or 5 of them.
Nice.
So
Wow.
I thought I appreciated that very much.
And you have to use that judiciously. So if you have the freebie tickets, because the admission ticket allows you to work the actual FastPass system,
right?
Which gives you a reserve a space in a 30-minute window. How far ahead of time? So
like a couple hours down the line.
So you have to kind of mix and match.
But you can only have one out at a time.
That's right, of that reservation system. If you have the fast passes, there are 2 colors of the fast passes. The make good passes, which you can get at Disney City Hall, I believe. If a ride suddenly closes and you're in the queue, or if
What are the different colors do?
There's the blue color, which is the normal rides in either California Adventure or Disneyland, or the red, the hot pink color.
Whoa.
And those are the special ones that allow you to cut the Cars line. So if you get any of the hot pink ones,
Cut the what?
the Cars line in California Adventure,
You mean the racing racers?
the racing,
Yeah.
that is the longest line.
That's too old for your kids, isn't it?
No.
No.
No, my daughter is now tall enough to ride that ride. And he specified he's going to send us one for that.
Oh, so
Nice.
that's the one you save
So I'm super happy.
for the Cars one.
Yeah.
Because that is probably the best ride in Disneyland. It's California Adventure.
You know, it's a ripoff. And if you're a Florida resident, you get discounted passes to Disneyland
World? Yeah.
If you're a Southern California resident, you get discounted passes to Disneyland.
Uh-huh.
If you're a Northern California resident, you can fuck right off.
It's true.
Yeah.
Makes me angry.
That's a ripoff.
Yeah, I feel bad about this. Okay, I think we talked about Disneyland enough. So you're gone next week. Have fun in Disneyland.
Thanks.
Jeremy
I'll
Williams.
send you pictures.
Please do. There's not a huge amount of tech news this week. There's some big stuff that happened. A lot of NSA related stuff broke this week. Ars Technica has a really good write-up that explains basically the Kaspersky folks, which you know them from Kaspersky Antivirus, released the results of their findings about malware that I think we're supposed to assume was created by people affiliated with the NSA, right? That was my takeaway. And the stuff that they found is incredibly technically proficient. It's things like malware that lives inside the firmware on hard drives, which involves rewriting the firmware on hard drives so that the hard drive continues to work, and then also hiding your payload in the hard drive firmware.
Yeah, would this be inserted at the factory or
No.
on my PC?
It seems like some of it could be inserted, like if their rootkit looked and saw, oh, you have this specific kind of hard drive and we have this this firmware for it, they could replace it at that point. It seems like they may be intercepting packages that are being shipped places.
Yeah.
So like getting something that goes from China to Iran, for example, and intercepting it along the way and putting some of the stuff on there. There was a ton of other stuff. The Ars article is definitely worth reading. I'm not going to recount the whole thing because it's pretty intense. But they were hiding virtual file systems inside the registry. They set up a bunch of redirects to take iOS and OS X devices to pages that can install rootkits via the web. Crazy stuff. And the Kaspersky, the people who did the research were basically like, look, most of this stuff is completely undetectable. A exploit that lives in the firmware of your hard drive is something we not only don't have any way to see, we would never, like, even if we wanted to look there, we don't have a way to look there, right? We can't inspect the hardware for the firmware on hard drives. A, because we'd have to work with the hard drive companies and they're going to consider all that stuff proprietary trade secrets. But B, it just, you can't, the OS doesn't provide access to that as a general rule. Like the firmware update software for devices like hard drives uses special per device things. There's no APIs or anything for that. It was pretty amazing. Like, you know, as a general rule, I think most people today feel like, okay, you leave your password stuff. You do right by password stuff. You don't install random stuff from third parties and, you know, malware sites and stuff like that. And you're safe. Maybe you run antivirus if you feel like you need to, or run Windows anti-malware. And this is just a whole other level of state-sponsored hacking. So the Ars article explains how they found out about all this stuff, and it's super neat. It's definitely worth reading.
I wonder if we can't block these kind of attacks with standard antivirus software, if we need lower level access than that. I wonder if like the motherboard industry will get into antivirus work and that will become a new selling point for motherboards.
I wouldn't be surprised if hard drive manufacturers start selling secure hard drives that you can't update the firmware on.
Yeah.
You know, that seems like the first step to if you want to charge a lot of money for hard drives to places like Iran and North Korea, you know, there you go. AT&T is also another Ars story. AT&T has offered fiber in places that Google is offering fiber. The service is called AT&T's Gigapower.
And they're matching the prices, right?
Kind of.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's an asterisk. They're selling I think this is Kansas City and Austin maybe.
Okay.
The gigabit AT&T's gigabit service costs the same as Google's, $70 a month. But AT&T is charging customers an extra $30 a month if they want to opt out of the company's Internet Preferences program. What's the Internet Preferences program, you ask?
Yes.
What is the Internet Preferences program?
I'm glad you asked, Norm. The Internet Preferences program tracks the web pages you visit, the time you spend on each, and the links or ads you see and follow, and the search terms you enter. Then it works independently of your browser's privacy settings regarding cookies do not track in private browsing. If you opt in to Internet Preferences by not paying the $30 a month, AT&T will use the information to serve you targeted ads.
Kind of like what Google does.
It's exactly what Google does. The difference is
you can't opt out in Google.
You can't. Well, you can, because that's what all the do not track and all that stuff does. Like that's the
You don't
whole
have to
point.
pay then.
You don't have to pay, right? So they're just charging $30 for something that if you choose to do, you can do for free. It's just pretty skeezy. I think $30 seems like a lot of money for the information that they're getting out of that and the amount of revenue they're going to generate.
This seems.
Knowing what ads cost,
This doesn't seem like a business model.
I think this like.
This seems like let's do this in the areas of Google Fiber to get people scared about Google Fiber.
No. I think this is Google's plan. I mean, they wanted people to compete. They're just totally happy with that.
Right.
They just want people online. And so I think they were thinking the internet is not growing as fast as we want it to. Let's get some fiber out there to encourage some competition. And so AT&T is stepping up and doing exactly what Google wanted them to do.
They put their own fiber in?
AT&T?
AT&T put their own fiber in the city?
Has fiber everywhere.
So
it's just not turned on, and the last mile is usually the problem, right? My hunch is that somebody at AT&T was looking at $79 as their price point and was like, "Man, we're not going to make our margins that we need to get on this. We need to figure out another way to get more money out of this." And they said, "Well, let's start targeted ads. We'll just do what Google does." And then they said, oh, well, we got to give people a way to opt out of that, which is the only reason we're hearing about this. If they hadn't given the opt-out, then no one would have noticed until somebody sat down and read the 1,500-page terms of service. But yeah, my hunch is that this is, hey, we couldn't make margins on a gigabit at $80. I mean, I don't have any sympathy for them. I think it's still sleazy as shit. But, for what it's worth, it's pretty sleazy when Google does it too. Let's see. Did you guys see the Apple Car rumors this weekend?
How could you miss them?
Stupid.
I did.
Everywhere on the internet.
The Richard Scarry one was my
People
favorite.
just digging. Wall Street Journal confirms. They know people. So,
What's the rumor, Norm?
oh my God. According to Wall Street Journal sources, Apple has about 100 people working on experimenting with building a car, an actual electric car.
Major
And-
high-level executives?
No, was that who they said? Major high?
Yeah, like seriously, like people from like star engineers from the iPhone team.
So
Well, so I mean, here's the thing. The hard part of the electric cars, there's two things that are hard, right? Batteries and motors. They're pretty good at batteries at this point. I think we can all agree it's the same battery. It's just making them bigger and stronger and manufacturing and all that stuff, right?
I don't think it exactly scales that way, but they have a lot of experience with battery technology in some capacity.
Fundamentally,
yes. Yeah.
the hard part of batteries, they're good at.
They're friendly with Tesla.
Yeah.
So-
except for not that friendly.
They're
Who was
not?
it?
I mean,
Jason.
runs Android.
There's some What?
The Tesla runs Android.
Yes, well that's true, but I think that they have good relations
They're
with Elon.
pals.
Yes,
Someone speculated that Apple will buy Tesla for $75 billion in the next couple of years.
yeah, that was Calacanis.
You think that's going to happen?
I think he made a really good argument.
That Apple would?
Yeah, that Apple should try.
Okay.
But his argument was hinges on whether or not Elon would sell. And his
Wait.
We've been on the wrong video the whole time. When I brought it in, it came back on 4 instead of 2.
what's that mean?
That means we have no video for the first however long we've been doing this. 40 minutes?
Are we stopping?
Huh?
Still had stream audio.
Okay, let's keep going.
Keep on going.
Charge on.
Roll it.
Never
Roll
stop,
it.
never say die.
Can we get some Chloe footage over the first 40 minutes?
I'll do something. I don't know.
Holy moly.
Fucking terrible. Sorry guys, I apologize.
How about just no video this week?
I could do no video this
Let's
week.
do no video this
We
week.
need video though for YouTube.
I like video.
Damn it.
I watch the video, even if it's Chloe.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I'll just cut this video and put this over the beginning. And nobody will know. I'll take 40 minutes of video from the beginning of 2 weeks ago when it was just the three of us, and I'll drop that in. The lips won't match, but then all of a
That's
sudden they
fine.
will.
No, I think
No one will notice.
No one will notice. I do it. You start downloading that shit now.
I can't. Well,
Um,
okay.
Okay.
So the argument was based on whether or not Elon would sell
yes.
Tesla to Apple. I
He
think
can. It's public.
no, he could totally sell.
He could sell his chunk.
He
But
could,
Tesla is a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
Sure, they would need shareholder approval.
Right.
Yeah.
But he could initiate and make
Yes.
the case. 75, I mean, that's, again, an arbitrary number that Jason Calacanis threw out. But that's a lot of money for space exploration.
It's not. Look. Apple's not buying Tesla.
I don't know. Did you read his argument?
Apple wasn't buying Beats either.
I felt like there was a better chance of Apple buying Beats than not buying Beats when we talked about that before. Like, I still think it's kind of a dumb move, but they needed a streaming service,
Okay,
right?
so let's start-
And they can't
let's-
develop shit in house.
Let's step back.
Okay.
Should Apple be in the car business, making
Yes.
automobile business?
Would you buy an Apple car?
Not a first gen one.
I would.
So, well, if they buy Tesla, then it
I
wouldn't
buy
be
a car
first-gen
every 10
It'd
years
be
though, so
Well, you're right. If I was in the market for a car and Apple had a car, I'd buy an Apple car.
That BMW i3 looks really good. And that's exactly what I would think an electric car would
Jony
look
Ive
like.
drives a Bentley.
Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. So, one, should Apple be in the actual car manufacturing and selling business as opposed to the car integration business?
I think that they
End-to-end.
tried integration with the phone.
And they are still
And
trying
look how that
integration.
went.
They are absolutely.
Do you have a
they're
CarPlay
still
car?
trying integration.
I don't have a car. No, nobody
No.
has CarPlay because they're so slow to integrate it. And Apple sees that. They had this problem with the phone where they released the iTunes thing on whatever that third party was. You remember that first iTunes phone?
Yes,
the Motorola one.
Right, the
Yeah.
Motorola thing.
Yes.
And that was a failure. So they went and made their own hardware. They're trying to get the
I think it was the iPod phone.
Apple. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Then they tried to do it with the
So you can make the same case for television zone. Apple still hasn't jumped into the TV business yet,
But here's
partially because margins are low.
Yeah,
so is the car business profitable enough where they could manufacture at volume?
Okay, so step back. The TV business, Apple will enter as soon as the margins ramp up again as people start to shift to 4K. When 4K sets are cheap enough that they can actually make a profit and sell them, they will do that. I have no doubt. The car business, like it's
Okay, and to as a footnote to that, the 5K iMac helps them with production line for that type of panel.
Everything Retina display helps them with that panel, right? All the crazy high resolution, high density, small displays, and like Retina Mac displays are steps in that path.
They can just better yields, cut bigger sheets.
Right. I think that in fact, actually, we should probably do the math on that because I bet the math on that 27-inch iMac works out pretty well.
That's why, yeah.
The car thing, like Apple. Actually, all of the Silicon Valley companies that are the big four, big five, are diversifying. Facebook is doing dumb stuff like buying Snapchat and WhatsApp and Oculus, whichever one it is, one of the tween chat apps, right? Google is diversifying. I mean, that's what Android is. They're moving away from just doing search. Their primary business was search for 10 years.
Primary business is still search.
Still search, but they're building other stuff. They're doing things like the cars. They're doing the internet access in third world countries. You know, all of that stuff is with an eye toward diversifying outside of the okay. So the internet access is a bad example because that's actually strengthening the core business, which is selling ads to people. Yep. But the self-driving cars is clearly hey, let's do something that's outside of the core business.
And none of those businesses are big businesses yet.
But all of those businesses, like the self-driving cars, is a 20-year thing. It's going to be 20 years before we have self-driving cars.
So
they're taking a long road on that.
What has Apple done that's been a 20-year thing or a 10-year thing that's not going to immediately make money? Launch it with the intention to make money in 5 years.
Look at what they did with the Apple's move is and always has been establish the supply chain for the thing that they want to exist 10 years from now. They did it with flash memory with the iPod, and screens with the iPod Classic or iPod Color, whatever the one you could watch videos badly on, until they had the capacity to do batteries, screens, and flash memory for a smartphone. They did it with the touchscreens. The touchscreens, that whole thing has moved toward getting retina displays. Like they build out higher resolution screens on a small scale, starting with the phone, until they can do it on a large scale with the iPad, a larger scale with the laptop, and an even larger scale with the iMac.
We'll hopefully see with the laptop this year.
Well, but they've done the Retina MacBook is a thing that exists,
but not touchscreen.
No. But I'm saying so touchscreens and high density screens, two different things, but they did followed the same path so far. Like there's no reason they can't take the battery capacity they have now and start out a niche business of cars.
So you're saying the battery from the or flash memory from iPod Nano to iPhone, and I guess you're saying a screen on iPod 3G to high density to 5K Retina, that path and is akin to battery on everything they've done to car.
And here's the thing. You mentioned they have a tight relationship with Tesla. I mean, I don't know if considering poaching people from Apple to work at Tesla is a super tight relationship. But that battery factory that Tesla has now started working on outside Reno is going to make shitloads of lithium polymer batteries, right? More than they're going to be able to use for the foreseeable future. That's the goal with it, ultimately. Not obviously as they ramp up. But somebody has to buy those batteries, and it wouldn't surprise me if we see a multi-year deal with Apple and Tesla for Tesla to provide batteries to Apple.
I don't think Apple makes cars unless there are a few checkboxes are checked. One, they think there's improvement, which I think absolutely Apple and its executives and Jony Ive believes there could be improvement in car design and the way people interface with cars and use cars. That's an easy checkbox.
After reading that New Yorker thing, it's pretty clear that Jony Ive thinks he can improve anything.
Two, cars specifically,
right,
and has a lot of ideas and has thought about cars for years. Two, can they make? Do you think it will improve the world? And I think that anyone who wants to build a car that's not the same, not the same internal combustion engine car, Tesla included, wants to improve the world, whether it's automated, electric, and all those things converge. Three, can they make a business out of it? And that's the big question. Can they make a big bottom line business out of jumping into a new industry? I think checkbox 1 and 2 is absolutely no question checked. Checkbox 3. not so sure.
I think that question 3 is way above our pay grade. I think that is a thing that a large team of business people has been working on at Apple for a long time on any category that they're getting ready to go into. And the way to disrupt cars is to either do what Tesla did, which is offer in a niche category. They launched in niche categories: sports cars, 2-seat sports cars, and high-end luxury sedans. And thus were able to ramp their volume until they could get to the point that in 2 or 3 years they'll have a $35,000 or $40,000 kind of normal person car, right? What's Apple's approach going to be? They're not going to start with a cheap car. They're going to start with something super high end and then come down from there.
It would be starting off with the equivalent of the Model S, a $50,000 car. And my fear for that, just like before the iPhone, before they jumped in, and now the watch market, before those products came into the market, there were huge diversity of products, and people bought the product that not only worked best for them but also looked best for them. Now it's iPhones everywhere, and if Apple has their way, it will be Apple Watches everywhere. And if they do jump into the car market, it would just be, and they're successful, it would just be Apple cars everywhere, and diversity in the market, at least from the aesthetic standpoint, it's gonna shrink. It's gonna be way more homogenous, and that's a criticism. It's a valid criticism of Apple.
It's gonna be like Taco Bell and Demolition Man.
Yeah,
everywhere you go, that's what it is.
It's a big fear.
Well, it's like Minority Report. All those cars, they all look the same. All designed by Lexus.
Audi.
One of the interesting
Audi was iRobot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting points that I thought Jason made in this whole proposal was that if we do get self-driving cars, assuming that that's going to be a thing, and I know that it's hard to imagine that, but I think Will's right. Within 20 years, that's just going to be the normal kind of thing that we accept, sort of like we see, electric skateboards and Segways today. Once that happens, you have people in the car that no longer have to engage with the instruments. They can now be a captive audience for a tremendous screen that's sitting right in front of them. And you could sell apps into that ecosystem. And you could sell more expensive apps because, it's a new platform.
And network effects. I mean, one of the reasons it's sheer momentum when they jump into a category, whether it's phones, tablets, and maybe watches, is the more people use them, the better they are. Well, and with cars, that's one of the hurdles into a big smart car infrastructure is that it's a dozen different companies, domestic and foreign, working on different technologies.
So the other way to think about this is what if Apple's not working on a car but is working on a decentralized people mover system? So like in a world of self-driving cars, do you actually need to have your car, like think about how much downtime your car has. You spend an hour driving to work, 30 minutes driving to work, depending on where you live. You park it in a garage. It sits there and devalues for 8 hours every day while you're at work. You spend another hour driving home at night, and then it parks for 12 hours at night while it, again, continues to depreciate, right?
We talked about this last time. We talked about automated cars, right, and your belief that the future people won't own cars and it'll be shared.
More like
timeshare services or public services.
So
I don't think that's going to happen.
My belief is that people have two types of cars, right? They have cars that they love because they have cars that they own because they love the car. My neighbor has a couple of like late 60s Mustangs. He takes them out every weekend. He washes them and waxes them. They're really loud.
That's his car.
He loves them.
Yeah.
They're like surrogate children to him at this point, right?
That's the car Apple wants to make.
That is a car that's not going away.
And I think that's the car that Apple wants to make, and maybe Google makes the other car, the commuter car, that's the public service car.
I think if in a world where 20-year-olds don't want to own a car, right?
In a current world where it's expensive to own a car, I don't think Apple's gonna make products that's not expensive to own. And they of course want to make products that people love and covet and
does Apple make products that are expensive or Apple make products that are good?
Both.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I feel like the good is the first goal. And changing the world.
They need to be mutually exclusive.
They don't have to be mutually exclusive. But I'm just saying a service that you pay $100 a month for, like City Car Share or something like that, that instead of you having to go to some crappy lot someplace and grab your car and take it for 2 hours and then be late.
You're saying automated,
you just hit the button and
Uber.
Automated subscription Uber is a like that's a slam dunk. Assuming you don't kill people.
I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I just don't think that's the business Apple wants to be in, and maybe that's the business Google wants to be in. But if Apple if the many ifs on top of ifs, if Apple were to get into the car business, I do not think, based on everything we've seen of Apple and everything they've said about how they approach product design and approach products, yes, they want to improve the world, and I think making a smart car would improve the world in some ways. I don't think a city car share style Uber automated car share world. I think that's pure fantasy.
I think it sounds
20
cool.
years from now.
20 years.
It doesn't sound like Apple, but it does sound cool.
Yeah. Okay. Do we want to talk about the Jony Ive thing now? This seems like the time
No,
to
I
do
want
it.
to. Okay. I think there are two big things we want to talk about. One is the absolute Jony Ive thing. I think maybe let's shelve that. We've done a lot of Apple talking. The big news that's relevant to our listeners that came out this past week is the FAA.
The FAA
proposals.
guidelines. Yeah.
This is the absolute biggest news. I should have started with this.
This is the biggest news for a small subset of people.
For our audience, captive audience indeed. This Sunday, the FAA, after about a year of promises, announced their proposals for SUAS.
What's SUAS?
Small unmanned aerial systems.
Okay.
And these are their guidelines. What they propose will be law for their enforcement. So, FAA, through some court rulings, most notably in their win and settlement with Rafael Perker, the courts have allowed the FAA to regulate airspace for unmanned aerial systems, small ones, which hobbyists were very afraid of because, the extreme example is, does the FAA regulate your impulsive with flyer? Because it's an airspace. So with these proposed guidelines, they don't. And what's important to note is that these proposed guidelines aren't actually law right now. It will be about 12 to 18 months. It goes through a feedback period. There's like 60 days of user feedback, and they will be tweaking these rules. But it's pretty reasonable and only applies to commercial flyers. So that's what.
So that means hobbyists are fine.
Hobbyists, if you're flying, as long as you're not reckless and you follow your the local hobbyists.
The guidelines
that the AMA have proposed, and you're gonna be okay. But this is really exciting for businesses who want to do, for example, use quadcopters in news reporting, who want to use quadcopters in surveying, engineering, landscape surveying, building construction, or even delivery services.
Even search and rescue.
Even search and rescue. Now, the FAA guidelines only actually apply to unmanned aerial systems that are 55 pounds and heavier. For these types of
which is nowhere near the Inspire or the Phantom.
55 pounds
nowhere
is
near.
huge.
It is, and it's like you're talking about octocopter levels, carrying actually heavy camera gear. But I think with technology,
hold on, 55 pounds is way heavier than even the X8. I mean, the X8's not anywhere near.
Yeah, but
it's maybe 15 at the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but that's what this is.
So these are forward-looking regulations.
Very forward-looking regulations, and
I would think that Adam's the one that they use on MythBusters, that one with its payload is probably close to that.
Yes.
So like ones that they're using professionally for professional photography.
Have you seen?
Get close to that.
Have you seen the one that they use on? Okay.
The one they're building.
The one that Duncan's working on now. Yeah, I don't think it's anywhere. Still don't think that's anywhere near 55 pounds.
I know it can carry a payload of about that. So it could potentially be that heavy.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about aircraft plus payload.
Yeah, of course.
So you have your very standard. You must fly within the I think the G airspace.
What's the G airspace? Is that the 5 mile circle around international airports?
Yes, under 500 feet.
Right. Which is lower than the Phantom guys say you're supposed to fly.
Right, because that has 800 feet.
Yeah.
And I'm sure firmware will fix that. You can.
Are you flying commercially?
Yes. Yes. Well, you get max height, ceiling lowered. You must only fly during daylight, as defined by your local sunrise to sunset. For commercial, you can only fly during daylight. Max speeds of 100 miles per hour.
Has to be line of sight.
And this is the big thing. And so everything we said before, I think totally reasonable.
Yep.
Including also that individual aircraft do not have to be certified by the FAA. So just
so they're using ultralight rules basically.
just like cell phones, they're self-policing, and I think they don't want to stop innovation. They don't want to stop quadcopter companies from developing.
Cell phones
and
have to be
releasing.
certified.
But you
Right.
do have to submit your quad on request for inspection.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So the FAA can say,
Yeah.
we've seen this product.
So that's
this component. We want to inspect this component.
That's very similar to the way the experimental aircraft rules for human, like for things like gyrocopters and ultralights and those. They have to stay under 500 feet, and they have to like they don't have to be inspected until they need to be somebody requests an inspection, basically.
And you can even fly, as long as you don't fly over the public, you can even fly over the operator. That's okay.
Yeah.
Which I thought that's nice. So here are the things where the restrictions actually become more restrictive for people who run this as a business. You must maintain line of sight, either the operator or a spotter, a visual spotter.
Oh, is that right? You don't have to be the operator?
Yes.
So that means you can have the operator wearing FPV goggles
Yes.
and have just as long as you have somebody that's co-pilot ready to take over. That's
The
good.
spotter can only spot one, so it can't be one spotter for 50 people.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, one spotter per quad. Using the FPV does not count as the spotter, obviously. And I think that's reasonable. I mean, if we're going to see businesses pop up, for example, on the extreme case, quadcopter racing, right? Having a spotter per doing it as a team, that makes sense. But for companies like Amazon who want to do automated quadcopter delivery in rural areas or along the coast, that kind of stuff, that's not feasible then, because you can't have line of sight with that type of automated delivery.
Well, Amazon will find a workaround for that. They'll have a tracking camera on the quad.
That's what they're saying.
Oh, it can't be a tracking
It must
camera?
be actual visual line of sight without like visual impairment.
That's interesting. Are they requiring licensure?
So the other thing, one of the big fears the hobbyists had, and when we heard of what the guidelines could have been, were that commercial hobbyists would need to get an actual pilot's license. That's no longer the case. You will have to be certified by a FAA approved certification, a test taking center. So you have to take a test, and instead of costing, however much it costs to get a pilot's license with all the training required, several $1,000s, $5,000, it will just be whatever that test.
I think you have to renew that every couple of
And
years.
you do have to renew it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think that makes perfect sense.
It does.
That's exactly what I was hoping they would do.
And again, this is for people who want to use it as a business. And the definition of business is it's been loose, right?
So does this mean like a real estate agent who wants to get aerial photographs of a piece of property?
I think that would definitely be encompassed.
I think there'll be somebody in town who does it for all the real estate.
I mean, that seems like a really solid business
Yeah.
that you could get into right now if you live someplace where there's a lot of call for aerial footage of stuff.
And right now, FAA, because these guidelines are in place, they're not suing everyone. And technically, if you are using your footage for news, for example, or for real estate,
I thought there was an exemption for news, actually.
I'm not sure about the exemption for news, but definitely for some type of commercial production, FAA will only hunt you down and fine you $10,000 if you are operating recklessly.
Oh, is that right?
I mean, given their resources, that's the only thing they've done.
Yeah, I don't see the news. It's impossible
also
to find the news related exemption because searching for news just gives you a bunch of news sites.
Yeah. News quadcopter. There's a lot of that.
Yeah,
You can also only fly one at a time. Did you see that?
like one person can fly one quad.
Yeah, you're not allowed to fly two quads simultaneously.
very reasonable to
I would
me.
say that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I can't. Like,
I have
mean,
two hands.
Well, so what they're trying to avoid is the inevitable dystopian future where you release a swarm of quads and then they go out and destroy your enemies, right?
Well, the government can do that.
Well, they have they
Right.
have the mandate, but not for us. I mean, this seems really fair. This seems reasonable. And is there some exemption? Like, can Amazon pursue an exemption with the FAA? Or
It's unclear. The
Is there gonna be a legal
document
challenge?
is 195 pages long. I encourage people. The FAA also has a highlights summary that you can download as a PDF. All that is linked on.
Oh, that must
on
have been
the
what I
testing.
read because it was only 2 pages.
Yeah, that's the bullet pointed one.
Yeah.
that's the essential, the most important stuff. But if you're really interested in starting your own quadcopter cinematography business, read the 195 page one.
Wow. Amazon probably has a lawyer or two looking into that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about. Let's see. The Recode conference is going on right now.
What's come out of that?
Interesting. There's a little tiny bit of stuff about Facebook's intentions for Oculus VR and like Facebook developed apps. They're basically they're staying the course. Let's see. Facebook's chief product officer Chris Cox was being interviewed. And he said the question was about the one thing you haven't accomplished yet that you'd really like to figure out by saying, hey, virtual reality is pretty cool. We're working on apps for VR. It's not really a surprise that Facebook spent $2 billion on Oculus and is developing apps for VR. But he said basically it's a more immersive, fuller way to share what you're doing with your friends and family. That's pretty much it. Nothing exciting, scary, or worrisome.
In the VR world, also Google announced a partnership with Mattel to release the ViewMaster again as a children's VR.
We
toy.
totally tested one of those. It was a Mattel branded.
I don't know if it was Mattel branded, but it's definitely one of those by Target.
I went from thinking that that's a silly thing, like a cardboard turned into a toy, which, I have no interest in the cardboard. But then I went from that to saying, all right, this makes a lot of sense. And it only costs like $30.
That's right. Because kids are going to have phones. Kids are not going to use these they're going to hold them up. They're not going to use them, head strapped on, like you would a full virtual reality experience.
Exactly. Yeah, they're going to hold them up.
Mm-hmm. They're going to hold them up so you can actually take them off. You get rid of some of the nausea stuff.
Yeah.
And for viewing 3D movies, like 3D short animations for kids, that seems really great.
Mm-hmm. And it's like a ViewMaster with an accelerometer in it, gyro, so you can actually look around inside the virtual space rather than. And I loved the ViewMaster as a kid. That's probably where my VR interest has its roots.
God, but one of the great things about the ViewMaster, because it was film, the fidelity of the images is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was
That's true.
like 110 negative size film,
But
right?
it's
It was
still
small.
so much better than I think what you're going to expect these days, even with high pixel.
I mean,
screens.
it was like a TV in front of your face, though. It wasn't all encompassing.
It was square.
It was square, but you see a 3D image.
Yep.
And it was so sharp.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're remembering these better than they were.
I would like to grab a ViewMaster and take a look. I have some vivid memories of some dinosaurs looking amazing.
We tested out the Hasbro My 3D viewer in. I can't tell when it was.
terrible.
It was really bad. It made us both sick.
Was that the thing you could put an iPhone into?
Yeah, you jammed your
I
iPhone
bought
3G in.
that. I hated that.
It was bad.
Yeah.
It was the kind of thing you think, oh, this will be fun with the kids. Nope. Let's see. 200 gigabits a second using LED lights. This was an interesting story. They're using LED-Fi. Light-Fi is what it's called.
Oh, do tell.
And basically it is, I'm opening the page now. Actually, this was the page that started autoplaying video a little while ago. So I'm not going to open that now. But yeah, basically 200 gigabits a second is pretty fast for just lights. Like literally a light with a light sensor blinking very quickly.
How far apart are they?
That was unclear.
Direct line of sight.
It has to be a direct line of sight, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, but so does your TV remote in your TV. I mean, is it far enough?
Well, conceivably,
across the room?
you could send 200 gigabits a second from your remote to your TV using this.
Wow.
I don't know if it has to be that far away, but
Is it just one receiver, one transmitter?
I'm going to open it again. It has autoplay video.
I'm asking too many questions. I'm sorry.
It's worth mentioning that this is
It's just like fiber optic is parallel lines of fiber optics.
Yeah, there's always but fiber optic, there has to be back and forth.
Is that right?
To do internet connection, you always have to have two-way.
Yeah.
This is light fidelity, Li-Fi is what they call it, to achieve bidirectional speeds of 224 gigabits a second.
Bidirectional.
And let's see, it's a long way from being used commercially. Distance is, the link operates over a 3-meter range at 224 gigabits a second with a wide field of view of 60 degrees and 36 degrees respectively.
Using IR LEDs. That's insane.
Using, IR LEDs. Is that right? It doesn't say IR LEDs, just
okay.
LEDs.
Oh, okay.
My guess is that they're probably using multiple frequency bands and RGB LEDs, but I don't know for sure. But I mean, if you think about something even like the game frame, this would give you theoretically an easy way to update the device without having to bother with the Wi-Fi and all that. Like, it seems like a good thing for stuff that needs to be connected intermittently, not constantly.
Right.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting. Let's see. Other small stuff. Oops. Raspberry Pi 2, there's a bug.
Oh no, I just got mine in today.
It is basically, this is from Adafruit or from raspberrypi.org.
Adafruit.
Basically, it says that the Raspberry Pi 2 is camera shy. He's been photographing it. Every time the flash on the camera went off, his Pi powered down.
Don't use flash.
He poked around it to see what was going on. It won't suffer any permanent effects from being flashed. It only happens under very specific circumstances. It needs a high-intensity, long-wave light. So laser pointers or xenon flashes and cameras cause the device that is responsible for regulating the processor core power. It's the chip marked U16. I'm just reading off the page. It basically causes it to get confused and make the core voltage drop, which is enough to make it turn off.
Wow.
So it has to be a really high intensity burst, like a xenon flash in a camera or a laser pointer that will cause the issue. Everything else should be fine.
That sounds like it might be tough to fix with a software update.
I think you could probably just put a sticker over the affected chip and it will solve the problem.
Oh, a little piece of
like black
opaque
electrical tape.
something.
Yeah. Maybe some paint. I don't know.
Put your Pi in an enclosure.
Exactly. Although it does make me kind of think that going to Maker Faire with a giant xenon flash and just strobing constantly would be the rudest thing you could do.
Cheapest EMP ever.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Other small stuff. Did you guys watch the SNL 40 thing?
Yes.
It was really good.
It was really long.
It was, yeah, but it was so good.
I
think SNL should just quit now.
You think that's it? 40 years and out?
I'm thinking like this is the last time they could have done something like this, because I mean 50 obviously is a even more momentous milestone.
Yeah, but a lot more people are going to be dead
or just more sad.
Yeah,
I think even the star players, some of them on the fringes of
You know,
sad.
like Dan Aykroyd and
I thought Dan Aykroyd was pretty like that.
And the lesser of the blue cheese.
Chevy Chase.
James, anytime James Belushi is playing a role that was originated by John is sad.
Jim, the lesser of the Jims.
James is Jim.
I thought-
same
Yeah, I know. I'm saying that there's a lot
Yes.
of famous Jim brothers who are not as famous as their.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Jimmy and Justin did the Blues Brothers homage in the beginning, in the opening.
I thought that was
intro.
appropriate.
I thought that was great.
There were a lot of. I thought that Dan Aykroyd doing the cold open with the Bassmatic was delightful. It
So
took
this
me a
is-
minute to realize it was now. Like I was like, oh, they're running Bassmatic again.
Because they just did that recap of through the years,
Right.
and then they went direct right to him.
Right. And I was like, oh wait, he's really old. This isn't. This is today.
Yeah.
3.5 hours, a retrospective
4 on the TiVo.
for 4 hours, 8:30 to 11:12. Jeez.
Well, with commercials,
With
yeah.
commercials.
Yeah.
It was the best bits. Everyone came back. Eddie Murphy came back to not be funny.
I haven't gotten that far. I'm
Okay.
inching through it. But I understand this is his first time back since actually being a cast member.
Yeah. In like 30 years or 30, 31 years.
They spent a lot of time talking about basically Eddie Murphy saving Saturday Night Live because it was during the dark time.
Chris Rock's homage,
Rock talked about
his
that,
intro
yeah.
was fantastic. And an epic after party, apparently.
Prince played.
I mean,
Prince and Taylor Swift and Jimmy Fallon dance, and you have Billy Murphy playing tambourine
Oh,
on the
no way.
side, and
like-
they went crazy. Sarah Palin got heckled outside.
G.E. Smith was there.
Ooh.
They did that opening bit that Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake did. Like you think about that, and they do that on the Tonight Show and Late Night and all that stuff fairly regularly. Like the long dance routines, song and dance routines, but they did it live, and it was a good like 6 minutes.
And fast.
Fast, yeah, like no breaks. It was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I thought they must have done that very, very well. I mean, they rehearsed that very, very well.
Kanye was great.
Kanye was good.
It was. I mean, the cast
really
of that
loved
special is off the scale.
Just the
Just
audience in that special
You
was
could
off the
watch-
scale.
That's a good point. That says how high the
You could
cast
watch
was.
that and just make vines of the audience reactions. Like, well, there goes George Lucas and Spielberg. That's Michael Douglas. Look, Larry David being really funny.
Larry David was really funny.
It's worth watching.
Was I a writer on this show?
No, it was him and Seinfeld.
Yeah.
and then that's it. And then we made the best show, arguably the best show ever made. And then that
We
can't
went out
be
on
done
top.
anymore.
Yeah. It's highly worth watching if you haven't watched it already. It
A
was
lot of
really
people
good.
did. I think NBC said some of their highest ratings in a decade.
NBC always does those live things. Like that's their thing. Because remember they did the live episodes of 30 Rock. They do.
No, I didn't know that.
So they seem to like doing live episodes of thing that is not generally live.
Were they the ones who did the live on Golden Pond?
I don't know about that. They did a live. Well, they did the Peter Pan live earlier this year.
Right.
They did Sound of Music last year. They did. Oh hell, there was one other.
West Wing was the live episode.
They did live episodes of all the way back to like ER. There was a live episode of ER. Live episode of West Wing, live episodes of 30 Rock. So yeah, I mean, it's a thing that they like to do.
It's surprising that it was live given the cast, because if you can get all those people's schedules in sync to actually be there that night, I assumed that they had been shooting this over the past couple months and they would bring people in for sketches.
I think they must have scheduled it 2 years ago.
Exactly. They must have been working on this forever.
Was there an episode on Saturday?
No, I don't think there was.
I don't know.
It usually just pops up on the TiVo and we watch it on Sunday morning if it's new. The thing that was amazing to me about that show is how like that studio was packed. Like they had bleachers where they don't normally have stage area and setup area.
And everyone's in a nice suit.
Oh yeah. And they were doing bits like at the doors in the back where you usually see Lauren. When they do a bit in the opening monologue with Lauren standing and watching the show, he's usually standing at the doors back but underneath the where the audience sits. And like the Chevy Chase bit that happened with him was done there. Like there was a lot of stuff that was shot against doors and whatever while they were flipping sets on the show. It was a really impressive live thing to do, much less do live.
I want to also shout out the edit from the beginning montage where they do the cast members. If you have it on TiVo, go back and watch that because the edit is phenomenal.
Do they see how So I didn't watch that. I was tucking the baby in, but
yeah, it's a montage of all of the classic intros, but as well as all of the like lots of classic scenes, and they'll do little like swooshes where things fly across the screen. But it's every president that's ever been impersonated.
Yeah.
And it's just all very well conceived. It's not just aesthetic. It's pretty awesome.
They did a lot of like just storytelling with edits that I thought was really neat. There were a bunch of montages. There were the president montage that they did later on was the politics montage that they did later on was really good.
Sports, digital shorts.
Yeah, the everybody's favorite weekend update joke, which is what I assume. Like there was a weekend update montage that was basically one of all 33 people or whatever that have hosted weekend update, and I think it was that they said, "Hey, what's your favorite joke?" And then they pulled the favorite. That's what I want that to be. I don't know if it actually was.
You think they asked the actual actors?
I hope that they asked the cast members and said, "Hey, what was your favorite joke?" The Tom Hanks bit, with Tom Hanks and who's the comedian? Who's the comic? They came out and did the actors' sports figures. Who's the best host of Saturday Night Live? Actors, singers.
Oh, that was the intro.
Was that the end of the intro?
Martin.
Steve Martin. Yeah, the second intro.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good show. G.E. Smith was there playing the guitar.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
It made me realize we grew up with the best.
Everybody thinks that.
Well, maybe
it's like Simpsons.
Realize
Not this year, not this generation.
This season was started out rough, but it's found its legs.
Not the best.
Nobody ever thinks it's the best. It's only in retrospect. Let's see what else. We're all over this list, so I'm not going in order. HTTP 2 is finalized. This is a big deal, but it's not something that most people will know about for a long time. HTTP is the Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's basically the underlying language that sends web pages from servers to your browser. And there's a lot of things that can change as a result of that. Things like the ability to multicast video streams and stuff like that come in as they enhance the protocol. So the number 2 version of this has been finalized and is moving toward being fully standardized by the IETF HTTP working group.
Now, what's the difference between a 2.0 version and all the enhancements they've made since 1994?
So the last big enhancement was in 1999 when HTTP 1.1 was adopted. That's when they added stuff like multicast and server push and all that kind of thing. The new standards. So I think with 1.1 they added the ability to do what's the opposite of sequential?
Asynchronous?
Asynchronous, yeah. So I guess, so basically when you load a web page, instead of sending first the HTML file and then downloading everything else, it would stream in the beginning of the HTML file and then pull in all the assets simultaneously. So, it's stuff like that. So that makes the pages load markedly faster. It takes a long time to roll this stuff out because you've got to update all the infrastructure on the web. So that means Apache has to, all the web servers have to support it. All the browsers have to support it. HTTP REST will be cheaper to make is one of the big changes according to the Next Web. Basically, the web community has told developers to not use too many HTTP requests on their pages. So you do things like inline code or concatenate or whatever to reduce the number of requests. So instead of, say, having a bunch of scripts that are linked in your header file, you would then just embed the script in the header file, which means that you have fewer loads, but your file is much, much larger, right? This is probably a gross oversimplification, so I apologize to web developers out there. So fewer connections, fewer ports that have to open between your browser and the server online. It's stuff to make pages load faster, especially on slower and less capable machines, was my assumption. So that's that. I don't think it's neat. It's not going to matter for 2 to 5 years probably.
Okay.
VLC is adding support for Chromecast in the next major release. That seems to be across platforms. So they're going to roll out first in the iOS updated version, which will work with the new iOS. Because when iOS 8 came out, basically God damn it, people are calling me left and right today. When iOS 8 came out, this is the real problem with connectivity.
There's a little switch on the side for mute.
Not on the iPad.
It's not?
No switch on the iPad.
Not on
Air 2.
Air 2.
I'll be damned.
Yeah, it's garbage.
Thanks, Jony Ive.
Anyway,
so that'll be the best media player is now compatible with the cheapest movie streamer.
$35, yeah. So
for your TV.
That means you can open up VLC on your computer, mash the button, it'll play on your TV, which means it's the easiest way
That's pretty cool.
to play shit on your TV from your computer, which I think is really cool.
Great.
Gizmodo had an interesting article I read yesterday titled "Fuck It, I'm Going Back to Firefox." Basically, the person who wrote the article, who I think was Eric Limer, basically said, "Look, all of the reasons that I left Firefox in 2005 when Chrome came out, 2006 when Chrome came out, it's buggy, it's slow, it's bloated, there's all this crap going on that I don't need. They're all absolutely true of Chrome. Now I'm going to reinstall Firefox and try that again." I've been thinking the same thing for a while. It's like Chrome on my MacBook, on my desktop, no problem. On my MacBook Air, Chrome is the thing that's always up in the little battery meter that says, "Hey, app's using significant energy." If I close Chrome, I get an extra hour of battery life on my MacBook right now.
That's not due to your extensions?
No, they have a longstanding bug about how they basically Safari, again, I'm going to oversimplify. Safari doesn't render tabs in the back. Like when you have a tab that's open, it only renders that tab, and other stuff that's not being displayed gets turned off essentially. Chrome doesn't do that for whatever reason because of there's a really long-standing bug that's been around for like 10 versions of Chrome now that they're like, hey, we need to take care of these APIs so that we don't use a ton of battery when you're not displaying stuff, and they haven't done it yet. So that combined with, I've cleaned out all my extensions, all that stuff. It's still kind of janky. So maybe it's time to switch back to Firefox. And people seem to like the newer versions of Firefox. So, do we want to talk about Jony Ive now?
Sure.
Oh, and let's do 3 last things, small things.
Oh boy.
Mars One. This is the Dutch TV show that's going to send people to die on Mars.
Yes. Attempt to.
Right. They're going to
They
try.
would succeed if the people die on Mars.
If they die of old age,
If they die on
mission-
Mars,
huge
yes.
success. They have announced the next round of cuts. They're down to 100 people. Of the almost 1,000 that applied, they cut a 1/7 of those, got down to 100 people. And now they're going to interview those people to find out their suitability. It is a super weird mix of people from what you can tell. It's like Australian teenagers and YouTube people and an occasional scientist or chemist.
This is the worst idea.
Why?
So the idea is that they're going to use a reality TV show. They're going to make a reality TV show of the people living and dying on Mars.
Dude, if this actually happened, this would be the most watched TV show in history.
I'm not saying the TV
for the first year or two.
I'm saying the idea of selecting people who don't have that type of mental training, the astronaut training, it's not only the expertise to fix and operate a spaceship,
It's TV,
but
man.
also to have the psychological training to stay 300 plus days in travel,
You
in
can do it
isolation,
180 or 200.
that's a tremendously bad idea.
So here's the thing.
It would have a great debut. First episode ratings will be very high.
Why is it a bad idea? Like they won't make it?
I don't think they'll make it.
So here's the thing. I think.
And what advertiser wants to sponsor that?
Oh, there's plenty.
Dude.
Dick
Life
pills.
insurance.
Game Frame is #1 in line. I will sponsor that TV show if no one else wants to.
So yeah, the plan is to send them by 2025. They have obviously tons of stuff that they have to do. MIT did a really detailed breakdown of why this is a terrible idea. Like the things that they have to work out that they have not. Like things like life support.
You're
food.
thinking of this scientifically, but
Yeah.
from a TV standpoint,
Oh, yeah.
this is a great idea.
Beats the shit out of the Truman Show.
Yes.
I think they should send McConaughey. He was great in Ed TV.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Just make it a hoax. Just, it's a simulator the entire time at the end.
Capricorn 1?
And they open it up and it's all VR goggles.
Did you ever actually watch Capricorn 1?
Yeah.
Capricorn 1 is the movie starring O.J. Simpson about faking the moon landing or maybe the Mars landing. I can't remember which.
When did that come out?
It's like mid 70s.
What?
It's really old. It is fabulous. So yeah, I'm not going to talk anymore about it. You should watch Capricorn 1. It is really, really phenomenally dumb.
Speaking of things that are phenomenally dumb.
Hey, I heard you watch Modern Family for the first time, Norm.
I did not, but I read the news that that Modern Family, an upcoming episode, is going to be completely done with screencast from a Mac OS 10 desktop.
Is that the show with Al Bundy?
Yes.
It is. It's very popular. It's won Emmys like every single year. Dysfunctional family. That's unconventional.
It's your
but
typical,
very modern.
like 4-camera sitcom, right?
No, it's documentary style.
Oh, it is? Oh.
But they don't acknowledge what they talk to the camera, but it's not actually a documentary crew. So it's just a filming effect.
So it's like The Office.
No, but the office actually acknowledged that they were filming a documentary
Oh, right,
for
right,
something.
right.
Here, they
PBS.
just shoot it that way because it is a way you can shoot it.
Whatever.
And another way you can shoot the episode is just make it a screencast, which from a writing perspective, I guess it's interesting because it's like, oh, we finally have
Is this
not Skype. It's
one episode?
one episode, FaceTime only, using basically a on-camera camera.
So I have everything I
on two
need to do it
cameras.
right here.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
We could redo this episode. I'm sure there will be people who just remake the episode using their MacBooks as well.
That's amazing. Not really.
Not really, but the worst part is that it's a trend. There's actually a movie coming out, a horror movie that's exactly the same concept. Basically, a Skype call. The entire movie is a Skype call, and it's a horror movie where people die at the Skype call.
So like a horror movie, I can kind of like that kind of tension. Like there's a long-standing like one-act plays are basically that, right? It's a one-act play set inside your computer. Right?
Real-time conversation, and it is a writing challenge, undoubtedly. I just think it's going to get old real
It seems like it would be better as a stage show. Like something you go out and you spend 45 minutes and then you go home and you think about it for a little bit and put on Modern Family.
Are you going to watch it?
No.
Not curious? No. My wife's going to watch it. She loves that show.
Or wives watch bad TV.
Hey.
Bachelor's 2-day finale still going on. That shit never stops.
In a post-Katie Cotton Apple world,
Yes.
they've opened up so much access.
Too much access.
So much access that the New Yorker has run a 17,000 word profile on Jonathan Ive.
I mean, in fairness, that's the shortest
Designer.
thing in the New Yorker so far this year.
The New Yorker does run long
Yorker
pieces.
joke.
Yes.
Thank you.
And while being a pretty typical, well-written profile, in that they follow him around and talk about what makes him tick,
What's
and
it like
also
to be Jony Ive?
and also give his history. There are actually some insights into design, current products, impending products, and a hint toward future products.
Do tell.
So let's start with impending product. Much of this piece was about the creation of the Apple Watch, why they did it, how they went about doing it, and why they believe it will be successful.
I understand it was Johnny who really wanted to do it, and he got a lot of pushback.
There
initially.
was, and this was apparently it really was an idea that formed around 2011, close to the time of Jobs' death. when he took his departure from his CEO, his leave. He never came back from. And apparently, according to the article, because the author interviewed not just Jony Ive, but Tim Cook, Bob Mansfield, a bunch of engineers, a bunch of people in the design team, and also people who have worked with Jony Ive in the past, and Steve Jobs, his wife. Apple at that time, they jump started a bunch of ideas. It was kind of a time when they wanted to experiment and see what other, maybe cars could have been one thing, but what other fields they could be in. And so the watch started around then. It was really Jony Ive's project, and he is a really good friend. I think it made really clear he really, as a product designer, he really associates himself with the luxury designer. Mark Newsom is a close friend of his, someone who now actually works for Apple from the UK. And you're right, there was some resistance. Apparently, some people in Apple didn't think that they could do something new in the watch market. They didn't think that they should be in the watch market, but this was a thing that Jony Ive won them over on, and now it's gonna happen. And he addresses some of those concerns about customization, about people buying watches. He acknowledges that the customization they have now is the colors that they'll have, but they are still thinking about it. So I think in the future we can anticipate Apple Watches not just of two different sizes and multiple colors and different watch bands, but also different shapes as well.
But he did say,
but no circles,
right?
Only curved rectangles.
Why no circles?
That doesn't make sense for lists.
Yes.
And lists are the primary
type of information
that's being conveyed on a watch.
Which, when you think of lists, that is basically what the iPhone 3, 4, 4S, 5, and 5S was fantastic for.
Jeez.
It was list type information because of the narrowness of the screen.
It made bulleted lists very readable.
Twitter is the single screen Twitter.
Yeah.
And that's why they got rid of the side menus that came in from the side that Facebook did. Which obviously changed with 6 and 6S.
Plus.
6 Plus, sorry. So one of the things that they did talk about in terms of that 6 and 6 Plus is that because of their prototyping capabilities, they created prototypes for the 6 and 6 Plus of every 0.1 difference, like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, all the way to I believe 6.5.
They had screens at all those sizes?
No.
Not screens,
handheld things.
But
okay,
the actual size and the proportions of the screens, because they have fabrication facilities, and then they carried those around, and they actually went from what they thought originally. I think they wanted a much bigger phone, and then they went down to the 5.5 and the 4.7. So it wasn't just arbitrary for the 4.7 and the 5.5, which
like based on the supply of screens or something.
Exactly, or based on what other people had done. They actually made every single prototype. It was really interesting, the insight into their design lab. They only employ 19 lead designers.
Who work under Jony.
Who work under Jony. I'm sure they have subordinates of their own. They have 3 recruiters that...
Yeah, he said that no one has ever left his team voluntarily. That was in a previous interview.
Only 2 people have left. They interviewed one, who was the one who badmouthed him, who said that he was a control freak, didn't let people talk to Jobs, and the other person left because of health.
Okay,
but they pay them enough, or they love working there.
Yeah, I think it's both, right?
It's gotta be both.
Those are
what Apple would say is, what Jony would say is that they love working there, and it's their life's work. But obviously they're well compensated.
Well, I mean, but if you are a creative person and you're doing industrial design work, like there's not a whole lot of mountains higher than Apple,
right?
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
And that's the other thing they got across is that they have 3 recruiters whose job is nonstop to find maybe the one person every year to recruit for the design team to fill their hole. 3 full-time recruiters looking at people, and they talked about the people who work on the design team. Whole swath of different talents. Lamborghini designer now works there. Someone whose sole specialist, their sole job is color expertise, and they're a color expert.
And is this team now working on software as well, or is this a different? Is this team just consulting with the software team?
I think they did. the article explained his role in the software, and it really seemed like he wasn't designing exactly, like he wasn't doing the wireframes for software, but just the approvals and the
approving pallets.
What Jobs would have done.
Okay.
It was really fascinating. That design facility, just the description of it, the perfect height countertops, which are higher than normal desks but lower than the ones you'd see at the Apple Store, with the giant, the big CNC, 9-axis, whatever axis CNC machines they had. In
I've seen a video of him making a prototype on one of those. It's
oh
amazing.
my goodness!
You load in a plastic blanket, and 20 minutes later, boom.
And it's right there in that workspace. And then that's all going to be, I assume, amplified in the 30,000 square foot space in their new, spaceship headquarters.
Right.
A lot of interesting things about like how many products they're working on at the same time at once, how their design team, when they prototype a design, it's not just what they send, to Asia isn't just the model. They send a working unit from end to end, engineering to paint, including the specifications for how the device should be, the components are machined, like tolerances on the actual the tooling, the actual tooling, and how much greasing on these tools to make it exactly end to end.
So does that mean they have the same kind of tooling that they have in China in Cupertino?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
What was the one thing? There was when Apple wanted to get in one of the when they wanted to do the unibody MacBooks, they bought like 10,000 of those machines.
What?
Just so they could.
So for the factory.
For the factory.
Yeah.
So
for the factory.
So they can machine that.
Right. They
exactly
talk about
that way.
Like if you go back and look at that video, the video of that press conference, they run a loop that shows.
I remember them.
Here's how they make those. It's the first time you'd ever seen the manufacturing of that kind of a aluminum shell.
It's the type of manufacturing, I think, that from a design perspective, I think you're supposed to not notice it, but when you do, it is what really separates the manufacturing of Apple products from other products. Software aside, just the actual manufacturing, which is something that I'm really curious to see what the Apple Watch looks like, because they talk that up.
What do you mean? The Wall Street Journal has seen it and they have described
the designers talked it up in terms of like, it's sapphire crystal, sapphire crystal not being sapphire glass, the way the front and the way the ceramic base is done, and the 40 magnets. Like, I want to see how this is actually done.
How it's assembled?
I want to see what the finished product looks like.
40 magnets?
40 magnets.
Some of the watch bands, yeah. I think it's the bracelet one.
Right.
Has a ton of magnets.
There was a companion, there's another article that came out earlier this week about Samsung design. Or no, it was Samsung or LG. But it was basically an indictment of the design model that some of these other companies do, which is contracting out industrial design to
outside agencies,
outside agencies, and why that only is good enough to a certain point. And I think if you read that article and this New Yorker article, you can really appreciate how end-to-end manufacturing, doing everything in-house, what the benefits of that are.
So the article
can't be mimicked.
The article was by Mark Wilson in Fast Company, and basically, I think Gruber's take on that was pretty good. He basically said, "Look, the argument that doing it externally is bad isn't the problem. The argument about what they take and what they don't take from the external design firms isn't the problem. The problem is that they're doing it externally in the first place."
Which is what some people have to do. I mean, turnarounds and lead times for a product, because let's just use Android Wear as an example. Google has its partners. I'm sure they seed Android Wear software ahead of time, but it's not like a 3 or at least 4 year development cycle for an Asus or Motorola to make a watch. It is a more condensed, maybe 1 or 2 years at most, and that's being generous. Google has their Android Wear specifications, and so Asus designs a product around it.
Right.
They have expertise in the SoCs, in screens, in touchscreens, and in some manufacturing, but I don't think it's to the level of detail that Apple's design for the in-house design is able to do, just because it's end-to-end.
It's the whole widget down to the finishing.
Yeah.
We missed a part of that Modern Family story.
Which is?
They're shooting all the FaceTime bits that are showing up on the OS X screen with iPhones.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems crazy that they would chuck out their...
Now, are they shooting with the front camera or the rear camera?
I assume they're shooting with the rear camera.
That's bullshit.
I FaceTime with the rear camera all the time.
But if the idea is that they're interacting on screen...
I know. It's all lies. Maybe not. Maybe they are shooting with the... I mean, who knows? Anyway.
Are they
Modern Family
Are they
owned by
going to hold
Disney.
them horizontal or upright, though?
It's upright.
It's gotta be upright.
I believe it's upright.
Oh, my goodness.
Based on the sample screenshot.
Yeah.
This is the tech equivalent of a TV show going to Disneyland, to tie it back to Disneyland.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when a Disney show like Boy Meets World or Step by Step, when they visit Disneyland, and all it is selling the attractions.
So for a long time, we knew that Apple didn't pay for promotional consideration on TV shows. But I noticed watching the last episode or last couple episodes of Parenthood, there's a bug at the end that says promotional consideration.
That's a lot of shows. It's been they pick and choose.
Okay,
But I don't think it's new at all. But they are definitely judicious about
It is not
what
everybody.
shows they want to be associated with. For example, Big Bang Theory, not Apple.
Right. That makes sense. Those guys wouldn't be Apple guys anyway.
That's Dell/Alienware.
Yeah.
You mentioned Mark Newsom. I was just thinking recently about his hire there and how it's kind of interesting. And I wonder if Johnny misses Steve Jobs. In because you hear about the conversations they used to have about design and how they were just very, very...
They're symbiotic almost.
Yeah, right. They would bounce ideas off each other, and they had very high standards. And I don't know if Tim Cook provides that for Johnny, and I wonder if Mark...
It was made clear in the article that he doesn't. They are more like cousins who respect each other.
Yeah, that's what I kind of imagined, and I wonder if Mark fills that gap for Johnny at Apple. He has somebody at his level that he can have ideas.
I would not be surprised if that's the case, but I also think that Apple is doing everything it can to keep Jony Ive happy. The big thing, I mean, the big takeaway from this story, from a future-looking perspective, is how much is on his shoulders, and his retirement, whenever that eventually will come, is going to be something that Apple will have to prepare for years and years and years in advance, because it's something that people are going to notice. Not just from a public press standpoint, but from an actual the implications within the company.
And on that note, I think it's time to take a quick break and have a word from our sponsors. Norman Chan.
Hey, Will.
A few weeks ago, we talked about SkillFeed.
Yeah, SkillFeed. It's a web service that lets you learn skills, kind of like these tutorials, and they're really nicely done. They're done by a variety of different people, but the people who produce these videos actually organize their tutorials in terms of like lessons. Like you learn everything from end to end.
I wanted to learn about masks and compositing in Photoshop. So it's something that I've kind of know how to do just enough to be dangerous, but don't really know how to get the most out of it. So I loaded up one of the videos, watched it, got a really comprehensive overview of how real actual graphic designers use those tools, and I thought it was super useful. So that's SkillFeed. You could try it out now if you want to go to skillfeed.com/tested. Then instead of the normal 7-day free trial, you get a 30-day free trial.
Learn as much as you can in 30 days. I think video tutorials are a great way to learn things. Screencasts, they get to, and you can do things from drone photography to video editing to all sorts of stuff.
Skillfeed.com/tested. Get 30 days free. Try it out. Thanks to Skillfeed for supporting This Is Only Test. And now, back to the show. So I didn't realize, because you're not wearing your headphones, but you can't hear the music cue that tells us when the ad should be done. Probably a good thing to notice going forward. Let's talk about what we've been testing. Norm, what have you been testing? Anything exciting?
Getting my Note 4 next Monday.
This is the Note
soon.
Note
Samsung
4.
Galaxy Gear.
So slow.
I know the supply they were back ordered, so it's finally arriving. I cannot wait.
Really?
I cannot wait to test both the phone and also test Gear VR.
Did you see that Carmack tweeted about the Galaxy Gear?
No,
Gear
what did he
VR
say?
the other day.
He's like the godfather of it.
That's what he does. He said he couldn't figure out why the production version of the pass-through. So the neatest thing about the Galaxy Gear, I think, from my extremely limited testing of it, is that you can flip on a menu that lets you pass through the camera from the front of the back camera on the phone, and just display that in the screen, optically corrected and everything, so it looks right through the optics.
So you don't need to take off the headwear.
Yeah, you can look down at your keyboard, whatever, with the gear with the headset on.
Some latency.
Well, so he said that the production versions were shittier than the versions that they tested beforehand, and he figured it out. It's because they turned off optical image stabilization before, or digital visual stabilization before, but not on the production version. So
Is there a fix?
I would assume there will be a fix.
I hope so.
Seems like if anybody can affect change on the Galaxy Gear VR, it would be John Carmack.
That's also one of those things I'm interested why someone hasn't, and maybe it's because it hasn't sold it as well, why someone hasn't introduced like a lens attachment so that you can put the lens on top of the back of the Note 4 when you wear Gear VR, so that your field of view is more akin to your actual.
Yeah, let's experiment with that.
Oh, a wide angle?
Right.
Huh.
Because you're getting wide angle field of view with Gear VR and the screen.
Yeah.
But the camera is a more narrow field of view.
Let's make that happen.
I haven't actually used the Gear VR yet with the Note 4 for the pass through, so maybe it's a good representation. I imagine there's got to be some difference in terms of field of view and also zoom.
I used it when we were at CES and I was in the background doing my VR video thing. It was nice. It was useful. Like, it was good. It was a little bit laggy, as you said.
But was there like a 1-to-1 representation of the actual
So what you saw was basically like somewhere in your field of view, you saw a perspective correct view of that. Would look. It looked. You know that old Sony headset? It looked like that. It looked like a 20-foot screen 10 feet away or whatever. What 80-inch screen 10 feet away, whatever that is.
What do they fill the rest in?
It's just
with?
black. And when you move your head, of course, the camera moves with it, so
then
it tracks.
You don't want wide angle.
Maybe you
then.
don't.
If it's far enough away, then it is the correct field.
Maybe that's how they match.
Yeah.
Instead of adding a lens, they just cropped it.
Right. I think what you're getting is a camera resolution wide window into the real world surrounding you.
I'm gonna record a podcast just wearing that.
Your neck is going to be really, really sore.
Well, that's part of the test.
Maybe it's still untitled. What's going on with your arcade build? We had a lot of questions about that.
Oh my God, that's still happening?
The monitor is still broken. The guy's coming. I have a scheduled appointment next month.
Okay.
Should have gone LCD.
I have an LC. No, fuck that.
I know.
No.
I just offended a lot of people out there, but
It just doesn't look right.
well, you can run filters where it looks fine. It runs acceptably well. For someone who cares a lot about arcade games, I think it looks fine. With those
You care a
filters.
lot about arcade games.
Yeah.
If I were building one, I would probably build an LCD one at this point, just because of the weight. The weight of that. How much does that thing weigh with the big CRT? A couple hundred pounds?
About 150 pounds.
Yeah. That's a. You have to carry that upstairs.
Oh,
it's going to stay in the basement?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. If you didn't want to have it in the basement, you'd have to carry it upstairs. I spent a ton of time over the last couple of weeks working on this Blu-ray ripping thing with former Whiskey Media engineer Andy McCurdy. There's a guy we talked a little bit about it a couple of days ago, but we're real close, and we'll probably have an article up hopefully by the end of this week or early next. So basically, I was talking to Andy and said, "Hey, there's these Bash scripts for Linux or OS 10 that will basically automate a lot of the stuff that you normally do manually in Handbrake when you're ripping a Blu-ray." So the old way I ripped Blu-rays was to rip the disc, rip the actual video and audio and subtitles from the disc using a tool called Make MKV, which is great. It costs like $50. It's shareware, and it's really, really idiot-proof, and it keeps it really up to date. So you don't generally, like when a new disc comes out, it doesn't work the Tuesday that it comes out, but it'll work the Wednesday or Thursday. Definitely by the next week, he'll release a new version that supports whatever the newest content protection is that the Blu-ray manufacturers use. So you use Make MKV, that spits out an MKV file with the native Blu-ray sized H.264 videos, DTS audio, AC3 audio, and sometimes just wave audio. Those are huge files. They're like 25, 30 gig files, depending on the codecs that were used for the Blu-ray player. And they could be H.264 VC1, which is, I think, a WMV derivative. They can even be MPEG 2 sometimes, which is weird. But they're really high resolution, massive files. And you don't need to really store a 25 gig Like it's fine on a disc because who cares? But you don't need a 25 gig video to get a decent looking rip. So what I would previously do is import that MKV into Handbrake and then choose the stuff that I wanted, the audio tracks and the subtitles and all that stuff, and then press submit, and it would run for a couple hours, and then you'd have a say 5 to 10 gigabyte video that looked pretty good generally.
Yep.
So the thing about Handbrake is the thing that we all know as Handbrake is actually just the GUI front end for command line interface. And this guy named Don Melton wrote a bunch of bash scripts that automate a lot of that process. So it'll look at the file. It says, okay, this video is this resolution. This is what I should crop it to. These audio tracks are English, so I'll keep them. This subtitle track is English, and it's only on like 2% of the film, so it's probably forced subtitles, like when Greedo's talking in the first Star Wars movie.
That's an actual subtitle?
That's an actual subtitle, because,
has to translate it.
Right. When people make a Blu-ray, these days it goes to everywhere in North America and everywhere in South America. So that means it needs to support at minimum French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English, right? So that means the subtitles, generally, which are forced, for stuff that's foreign languages in a normally English film, they use this thing called forced subtitles. So you have to find those, turn those on, burn them into the video, or embed them as subtitles, whichever you want. And there's a whole bunch of like fiddly bits that usually end up with you having to redo stuff if you mess it up. And since the encode can take 2 to 5 hours, 10 hours more if you have a slow computer, you don't want to have to do that part over and over again because it sucks. So the way the Don Melton scripts work is you just dump the file. You set up all your stuff in advance with a big batch file, and then you just run them all at once, and it'll run in the background. So I was talking to Andy about this, and Andy is smart on programming tools, and he said, I said, can we do this in a virtual machine? Can we set up a virtual machine that basically serves as a black box that you hook up to your file system someplace, and you give it a folder that you put movies that you want to make small in, and then some period of hours later, it spits out small videos that automate most of this stuff.
Sounds delightful.
It is delightful. Let me go ahead and tell you right now. So we've got everything working except for the audio track selection, which is the thing Andy's working on even as we speak. And the upshot is, you mount this virtual machine in VirtualBox. You can configure the virtual machine using a tool called Vagrant, which is what programmers use to make sure that their work environment is the same for everybody on their team. So like one person will make a VM and note all of the command line stuff that you have to do inside that VM to bring it up to like your spec, meaning pulling like Git repositories and making sure your tools are all set up, your compilers are the right compilers, and all the flags and all that stuff are right. And then all you do to share that tool with everyone, with all the people that you work with, is run a Vagrant command that automatically generates the VM. So it downloads the source VM from a website someplace, runs all the scripts, installs Linux, all that stuff. And so we're using that. So basically all you have to do is go to a GitHub repository, pull down the GitHub, pull down the commands, run the Vagrant command, and then it runs all the other stuff that has to happen. And then you can just open that VM up in VirtualBox or whatever and hook it up to your file system, drag your make MKV ripped files into it, and then they spit out as small
finished files.
iTunes quality. So the other thing that I didn't talk about with the Don Melton scripts, the thing that he does really well is he's using settings that mimic the way iTunes works. So normally in Handbrake, what you do is say, I want a constant quality, which means it tries to use the same bit rate across the whole movie, which seems great, except for when you have low action scenes and high action scenes. It ends up being very inefficient in the low action scenes and crappy looking in the high action scenes.
But you only need one pass, right?
So you only need one pass to do that.
So it's faster.
The other way to do it is to do this thing that lets you, basically you set the maximum bit rate above what the CBR would generate. So if it needs to go higher, then it can, but normally it stays to the low setting, which is what the Don Melton scripts do, basically. And the end result is videos, 1080p rips that basically are the same, in the same basic vicinity as iTunes files that look and sound like iTunes files and that are easily repeatable.
And it spits out MKVs
as well. You can make it spit out MP4s. The scripts are highly configurable, so you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
We're spitting out MKVs because they're more compatible with the subtitle formats that are available. And also you can do, I think you can't do certain audio formats in MKVs where, so for example, a lot of players will actually support the high-res multi-channel DTS uncompressed formats that are on Blu-rays. I think it's DTS HD. But most of the actual is that Norm? Most of the actual software like VLC and stuff don't actually know how to play those files. So you can, if you use MKV, you can go ahead and dump those files in there so that your Xbox and PS4 and that kind of stuff can play it if it knows how to deal with that codec, but it doesn't have to. So MKV is preferred, is the takeaway. It's the TLDR.
It's a great container.
Yeah, and it's really widely supported these days. It's not like it was 10 years ago.
Right, when it was like the piracy container.
Yeah, so now the upshot is if you dump an MKV file with a bunch of audio streams and subtitles into Plex and you have the default flags and all that stuff set right, basically it'll play the forced subtitles automatically without you having to set up anything. And you also have access to all the audio commentaries and all that stuff if you want to keep that when you're doing your rips. And there's some other stuff that we'll talk about later, but yeah, it's pretty neat. I'm pretty stoked with how it's turned out.
You should do an article about that.
That's why we're doing this work. Yeah. So I'm hoping to have it done by Friday, maybe early next week. We're working out bugs on the thing. If people want to test, if people want to help us test and are into ripping Blu-rays, just post a message to me on Twitter and I will add you to our beta mailing list. I also got a motorized unicycle.
Well, welcome to the club.
I know. Well, mine only has one wheel. How many wheels do you have?
No, I don't actually have one.
This is the Focus Designs SBU, which stands for self-balancing unicycle. I think it came yesterday. Do you have a question?
Did you read this or ride this at CES or?
No. So they saw the video, some of the videos that came out of CES and the boosted board stuff, and they reached out. I think Adam also has one of their earlier units.
But he actually rides a unicycle.
He rides so I've ridden real unicycles too. I'm not very good at it.
No kidding. But you can ride one.
20 years ago, I could ride a unicycle.
That's still impressive.
I don't know if I can still ride a unicycle. It doesn't come up that often.
Test it.
So what I was telling Jeremy is the self-balancing unicycle from Focus Designs arrived yesterday afternoon.
How much was that?
I don't know. They sent it for free. I think it's $2,000 probably.
We'll see if it self-balances.
This is not the one wheel.
This is not the one wheel.
Oh.
This is the stand-on thing.
This is it. I can't show you because I don't want to risk unplugging, but it's basically,
I see it.
Yeah, it's a unicycle. It has I think it has one of those motors that you put in if you want to make your bicycle motorized assist. You can just replace the back wheel or the front wheel or something with a motor that is embedded, and then it has some gyroscopes and stuff that will.
So do you pedal?
Keep it level? No. So there's just foot stands.
Yeah,
that you put your feet on.
Sounds
Well,
horrible.
we're absolutely going to test this.
Oh, I rode it around my backyard yesterday. It's super fun.
Really?
There's a fairly steep learning curve, and also my ass is sore.
So is it more expensive or less expensive than a boosted board?
I think it's more expensive than a boosted board.
What?
Can you
do not want?
Can you stand still?
As with any gyroscope, the faster the wheel is part of the balancing mechanism. So the faster you go, the more stable you are.
I would imagine, but can you stand still?
You can kind of do the thing that you do on unicycles where you rock back and forth.
Yeah.
I can't do that, but I could tell from the 20 minutes that I spent riding yesterday that you can.
Do you need a helmet?
I think probably a helmet is smart.
Helmet, I think, is very smart.
I'm going helmet shopping this afternoon because I don't have a helmet right now.
That's great, man.
Just order one online. Order one online.
How do you know it's going to fit? I have an enormous melon.
You can measure your head.
I have an enormous melon too. I shopped high and low for one, and I found one.
Online?
Yes. Well,
there you
yeah.
go.
I'll send you a link.
Send me a link. Yeah, maybe I'll come by and I never actually got to ride the boosted board while you guys had it, so I might have to go for a ride. Maybe we'll go riding and I teach you how to ride the unicycle and you can teach me how to ride the boosted board.
You might actually make me look cool.
It's probably true, actually.
And on that note,
what else? We'll talk more about the LG ultra widescreen monitor last week. I've been looking for a new 3DS to test. I can't find one anywhere.
Why? Oh, you mean the new?
Yeah, the new.
Yeah, I bought one.
Oh, you got one?
It's coming tomorrow.
Oh, did you order it from Best Buy or something?
B&H was the only place that had them in stock.
Oh, yeah, they're hard to find. I'm interested because the reviews seem to indicate that they're doing eye tracking to make the 3D effect work better.
Head tracking.
Right, head tracking.
Yeah.
that's
super
what they announced.
super exciting.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, more importantly, it seems like it actually works.
And I'm coming from the
reviews say.
original 3DS.
That's what I'm coming
so
from,
I don't
too.
even have like the benefit of, I've never even seen the big one, which is supposed to be an improvement just by itself.
So the big one was nice because it had better battery life and stuff, but the screen was actually harder to do 3D on. In my
I thought it had a wider field of view. Oh, interesting.
I mean, it may have had a wider field of view, but because it was bigger, the sweet spot was a lot tighter.
Yeah.
It was not optimal.
No, I'm psyched. I can't wait to play it. I already bought Majora's Mask.
Majora's Mask pretty good. Anyway, that game is aged better than I expected it to. I think we'll break now because we're out of time today. But thanks for coming by, Jeremy Williams.
My pleasure.
Have fun in Disneyland.
Yeah, enjoy Disneyland. Today's outro comes to us from Greg Storm. Greg Storm. It's today's outro. See you guys next week. Hi there. I didn't see you.
Test it.
You're in first class and you're looking around and you can't see who's getting incepted. You're getting incepted.
Test it.
Sorry about the lack of video in the first 45 minutes, guys.